In order to start this pair of asymmetrical earrings, I first started with the paint palette portion, say that 10 times fast, and I drew out what I wanted it to be, like a template, and I cut it out so that I could then trace it onto a piece of balsa wood. Looking back at this, I probably wouldn't do balsa wood if I was doing this again, because while it is lightweight, it is also extremely hard to get smooth edges, and sanding really wasn't doing that much to it. So I did my best, and I guess it worked with the rustic look, but I'd honestly probably use like popsicle sticks or some kind of wood that would have a smoother finish. Then I had to do like the little, I think it's for your thumb. I don't know, I don't use a fancy kind of palette, I use trash. So then I just had to literally stab through with a little pokey tool, because there's no way that I could get even an X-Acto knife in somewhere that small. And then I made my faux stain out of acrylic paint. To do that, I just mixed water with acrylic paint, and I just kind of brush it on to the wood. The wood just kind of like absorbs it, and in my opinion, it gives a really nice rustic look. Obviously, it's not a really viable option if this is a piece that you're going to be like handling or using on a daily basis, but they get coated with resin later anyway, so it's fine if I just literally fake it and it looks great. So, by the way, this is not my trick. I stole this off a YouTube video from somebody else. Don't remember who, because this was probably 6 years ago, and yeah, they're really cool. Anyway, this piece that I just cut off that you could see that I'm now bending, whoa, this goes fast, that is a piece of the thing that you use to like rip saran wrap off, like the metal thing. So in case you didn't figure out what I'm doing, I'm trying to make like that little cuff that goes on a paintbrush to like hold the bristles and the wood together, if that makes sense. And I tried to glue the bristles together, and then I put it on there to see if the sizing was kind of right, because, you know, I don't really know what I'm doing either. Look at me using tweezers like that. It's not gonna work. Yep, see, I got the pliers out. I got smart. So I put those on there for size a couple of times, and then I got it figured out, and it was about proportionate, and I even tried it. And then I just got it all tightened up. The very next day then, I came back and I cut those bristles off, like so. It kind of hurt me to butcher one of my own paintbrushes, especially considering that it was new. But you know what? We make the sacrifices we have to for art. And then I took another piece of balsa wood, again with it, to make the handle. And I just had to do my best with the sanding, and it was still not perfectly round. That's probably also because I lack the ability to make anything symmetrical. And then I just tried it all on for size, and then I stained the handle in a similar manner. Look at me, I look like I know what I'm doing. Anyway, I'm just trying to stab the wire through the handle and hopefully not break it, and I was so surprised it did not splinter, because like I said, balsa wood equals fragile. But you know, eventually it got in there, so I was able to bend it, and this is going to make that kind of loop part that attaches to the earring. So I basically just acted like the wire was one giant twisty tie, and I just kind of manipulated it, and it's honestly really hard to see because my big fat fingers are always in the way. But I eventually got it completely figured out, and, you know, I think I got it figured out. I had to redo one of them once, which I didn't show because no one wants to watch that. But, you know, I got it figured out, and I think it looks pretty decent, so there's something to be said for that. So I did that for both of the earrings, and I'm sorry that you have to watch that because it's really not that exciting and you can't even really see what's going on anyway. But then I put a little bit of resin on top there because I was still worried about the balsa wood splintering. So I let it cure, and I always cure my resin in the sun because my UV light is super weak. And then I went back and did basically the exact same giant twisty tie situation with the palette earring. And yeah, once again, you can't really see much because my fingers are in the way. I tried to only include the parts that were actually helpful, because most of the footage you couldn't even see. At this point, I'm just trying to map out where I want the colors on the paint palette to go. So I started basically with all the colors of the rainbow and just, you know, mixed some of my own out of the primary colors, which took me quite a long time, and I was working on it, and I was like, this doesn't look the greatest, and I was like, well, it's probably gonna get better, right, because sometimes you just gotta let stuff be, and then I was like, yeah, I actually hate this, like, I hate this a lot, so I tried to, like, mess it up a little bit to make it look used, but it was just getting worse instead of better, even though, you know, I kept trying to make it better. So I stepped away, I came back, I smudged kind of off the rest of the wet paint, and then I started over. And this time I made my color splotches so much larger so that you could kind of see them a lot easier from a distance, and they were kind of like pops of like this primary color action. And then I did indeed smear some stuff around a little bit, but it was nowhere near as chaotic as before. And I think that it worked pretty well. Was I crazy about it? No, but also I didn't think I could do any better. And then I also put some of the corresponding paint colors on the handle just to make it look like the paintbrush had been used with the palette and kind of make the set more cohesive. Then I worked on gluing together the handle of the paintbrush and the bristles. The glue wasn't holding, so I ended up resining it, and you saw it curing, and then I resined the rest of it once I was sure that the bristles, that's the word, would stay on, and then I resined the paint palette as well just to seal it in, also because balsa wood, like I've said twice in the past 5 minutes, is pretty dang fragile. And then I let both of those cure in the sun. And then this was a few days later because I got lazy and didn't want to do anything for a few days. So I came back and I made a second loop, kind of like a jump ring, to attach to the first loop that is on both of the earrings that would then attach to the earring part of the earring that goes in your ear. And yeah, make that make sense. But then it finally worked, and I was getting these earrings to come together, and I was pretty happy with them at this point. Next, I had to find the part for the backing card, you know, like when you get earrings and they're like on this card. This is all homemade paper of mine that I made at one point or another. These are just scraps from various projects that got left over. I settled on the green because the white just looked too bright, and I felt like the green showed off the wood tones and the colors of the paint and stuff much better. So I just cut out a scrap from the scraps, and I drew my holes, and I punched in the holes and put the earrings in them, and then it's time for the reveal.